It's difficult to imagine our lives without movies. For all of us alive today, cinema has played a critical role in shaping our collective consciousness, how we communicate, and how we view and interpret the world around us. From its inception, cinema has revolutionized the way in which audiences are informed, entertained, and educated, a process that continues to evolve as new technologies and methods impact the way in which stories, both factual and fictional, are told. Technology has always played a critical role in the development of cinema, from its beginnings as a novelty attraction to its recognition today as a medium possessing artistic value and merit. Early cinema can be characterized as a period of intense invention and reinvention, as inventors, artists, and entrepreneurs sought to maximize the potential of the medium and expand the boundaries of what was thought to be possible. By today's standards, these attempts at creating motion pictures may seem crude and simplistic. However, a closer look reveals a fascinating process at work, one that reveals the negotiation of a language and semiotics unique to the medium of film. At its core, film relies upon the illusion of movement created by the continuous projection of still images.
A motion picture is really only a fast series of still photographs that overlap in your mind. Tracings of two of these still photographs, placed one on top of the other, show that each of the two photographs has caught the press in a slightly different position. Here is the way the first photograph looks. This is the way the second photograph looks. Now let's take the complete series in rapid succession. Faster. Persistence of vision makes us see two pictures at once. As a result, there is an appearance of motion. So motion pictures are just still pictures joined together on a long strip of film. The more still pictures we get while the action is going on, the smoother it looks.
Cinema owes much to the discovery and development of various scientific and artistic processes over centuries. As far back as 150 BC, Ptolemy remarked upon the illusion that could be created through the stringing together of still images. And by 1038, Al-Hasan ibn al-Haytham had developed the camera obscura as a means to project a moving image of the outside world through a peephole in a darkened room. This concept would be appropriated centuries later in the form of magic lantern shows, where glass plates were illuminated by candles and mirrors to cast images onto a projection screen. These could be used to facilitate the illusion of movement. Finally, the invention of the zoetrope during the mid-19th century expanded the understanding of persistence of vision, as individual pictures depicting different phases of motion would be spun at such a speed that the images appeared to fuse together to create one continuous fluid motion. The evolution of the moving image is obviously indebted to the development of photography during the early 19th century. The very term motion picture is itself an indicator of how the earliest filmmakers and audiences perceived this new process to simply be an extension of still photography. This is perhaps best exemplified in the work of Edward Muybridge, whose motion studies of human figures and animals beginning in 1872 relied on the use of multiple cameras whose shutters would be released by tripwires triggered by the movement of his subjects. This development ignited a flurry of camera inventions that would allow for continuous shutter release and motion capture, leading to the creation of the cinematograph by the Lumiere brothers in France. Their previous work in developing a dry plate process for still photographs, perforated film that allowed it to move through the camera and projector, and the refinement of the cinematograph, which functioned as both a camera and projector, led to the creation of the first commercially viable cinema that the Lumiere brothers were able to exploit. Their first film, Workers Leaving the Lumiere Factory in 1894, exemplified the documentary-style approach to filmmaking that characterized the body of the Lumiere brothers' films, which were usually under a minute in length and relied upon a stationary camera to capture a single scene or action. The Lumiere brothers viewed cinema primarily as a novelty act, as did their audiences, who were drawn to projection salons in order to witness the magic of the moving picture. The American inventor Thomas Edison, however, saw significant commercial potential in cinema, and almost from the beginning licensed out his films and the kinetoscopes with which to view them, which led to the birth of the Nickelodeon Theater. Unlike the Lumiere brothers, Edison had no qualms about staging and manipulating situations to be shot on film. This led to the characterization of Edison films as being exploitative in nature, as many subjects tended to depict comedic violence, risque situations, exotic characters, and absurd situations. Arguably, Edison's studio paved the way for the creation of narrative films. One of the film's earliest pioneers, the French magician Georges Méliès, was one of the first filmmakers to recognize how cinema technology could be manipulated in order to create fantastic illusions and facilitate certain kinds of narratives, fantasy in particular. Despite using a stationary camera similar to the Lumieres and Edison, through the use of double exposures, dissolves, mattes, reverse motion, and cutting in the camera, Méliès created a series of techniques that would lay the foundation for a cinematic language that would allow future filmmakers the ability to manipulate concepts such as time, space, and continuity. Many of the techniques developed by Méliès and other filmmakers from the early silent era would contribute to a kind of early film grammar. Semioticians such as Christian Metz would refer to this as the semiotics of film, suggesting that certain codes and signs that characterize cinema created a language system in and of itself. Metz was able to analyze the textual features of cinema to establish how meaning was created. Of course, by the time of Metz's writings, filmmakers such as D.W. Griffith had long established a film grammar through trial and error, and through appropriation of existing filmic techniques. Known for his unique sense of speed and pacing, Griffith, unlike many of his early predecessors, utilized a wider range of shots, most notably the close-up, for dramatic and narrative effect. His work was also characterized by the use of cross-cutting for suspense, the use of fade-outs to express the passage of time, as well as a greater sense of staging and mise-en-scène that were often used to accentuate his melodramatic flair. Sergei Eisenstein, a Russian contemporary of Griffith, took the concept of montage, essentially the splicing together of different shots, to much greater effect. While Griffith was preoccupied with composing a structured linear narrative through the use of montage, Eisenstein was more concerned with the expressive qualities that montage could create. Eisenstein's use of montage is therefore more fragmented and discontinuous, edited intentionally in order to accentuate the psychological mood of a scene, to manipulate the concept of time and space, or to direct associations between disparate images. Film critic Sam Brody explains that Eisenstein's use of fragments are not joined to create a continuity, nor do they refer to an interior unity of which the fragment is an essential part, but rather correspond to a need to demonstrate a relation or organize a significance. This concept of montage can be seen quite clearly in the slaughter scene from Eisenstein's 1925 film Strike, where the action of the Tsar's armed forces attacking the fleeing workers is juxtaposed with the butchering of a cow. Through the use of symbolism and association created by the non-linear juxtaposition of images, Eisenstein's meaning is made graphically clear. The introduction of sound, color, and new camera techniques in the years following the silent period would continue to add to the grammar and semiotics of film. However, the work by pioneers of cinema laid the important foundation upon which future filmmakers would build. Through the developments in technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, and artistry, these building blocks of cinematic language would provide the means to create new ways of seeing and knowing, to communicate and entertain, and to reach out to wider audiences than had ever been perceived before.